Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Tusko the Elephant and Louis Jolyon West. Alright, please pay strict attention because I'm going to tell you a story about a criminal who worked for the CIA his entire career and how he murdered a 7,000-pound elephant at the Oklahoma City Zoo, which at that time was referred to as the Lincoln Park Zoo. And the reason that I'm going to select Louis Jolyon West is that you'll recognize many CIA operations as his assignments. In other words, he was part of operations throughout the United States. You should also know that his background is identical to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the expert in AIDS research and coronavirus, the common cold. And I say that with all Masonic contempt. So both Anthony Fauci and Dr. Louis Jolyon West, who both have medical degrees, one in psychiatry and the other one in quackery, from Cornell University. I said Cornell University. They're both born in Brooklyn. Both of these knuckleheads were born in Brooklyn. Louis Jolyon West was born in 1924 in Brooklyn. Anthony Fauci was born 16 years later in 1940 in Brooklyn. They both attended Cornell universities where they received their medical degrees. Anthony Fauci attended Holy Cross College for his undergraduate, as a footnote. But anyway, getting back to the subject matter of Tusko's murder, a 14-year-old prized elephant who was put down by the quackery and malpractice of Dr. Louis Jolyon West in 1962, in August 1962. I don't have the exact date of death of Tusko. 7,000-pound innocent elephant minding his own business, murdered by a CIA MKUltra criminal medical doctor. All right, so let's just be real precise. Louis Jolyon West was born August 6, 1924 in Brooklyn, and he's been involved with many CIA operations. A part of MKUltra. He was born to a Ukrainian Jewish immigrant father and mother, so he's Jewish. He was born in poverty in Madison, Wisconsin. Well, pardon me, he was born in Brooklyn, but the family moved to Madison, Wisconsin, which is a university town, and they had modest means. Louis Jolyon West attended University of Wisconsin-Madison, right, for 1 year, and then after completing his prerequisite courses at University of Iowa, he then entered the United States Army Specialized Training Program during World War II. He earned his medical degree from University of Minnesota Medical School, but completed his residency status at Cornell University, the Payne Whitney Psychiatric Clinic Department of Cornell University, which is located in Upper East Side Manhattan, not too far away from Bellevue State Hospital, if you didn't know. And also, this is where Dr. Albert Laverne resided, you know, when his wife was murdered by one of his Fordham University students on 5th Avenue near Central Park East. That's right, it's the Upper East Side of Manhattan. So anyway, the Korean War, prisoner of war and brainwashing, prisoner dilemma game experiments. Dr. Louis Jolyon West was involved with that from 1948 to 1956. He attained the rank of major in the United States Air Force. He was assigned to Laughlin Air Force Base, which is an enclave of San Antonio, Texas. He participated in the conviction of an airman for the rape and murder of a preteen little girl. It is very unclear if the airman was guilty. There are no witnesses to the crime. It was all based on Dr. Louis Jolyon West's psychiatric hypnosis, where he claims the fellow confessed to the killing. I don't believe anything that Dr. Louis Jolyon West says. And I'll never believe anything that someone who completed their residency at Cornell ever says. And that includes Dr. Anthony Fauci. I wouldn't believe him either. Anyway, I want you to know that just like Ron DeSantis, Louis Jolyon West had prisoner dilemma game training as it related to the Korean War detainees. He published a paper that was entitled United States Air Force Prisoners of the Chinese Communist Methods of Forceful Indoctrination, Observations, and Interviews. Boy, that's a long-winded sentence, isn't it? Project MKUltra. Cornell University, where Jolyon West completed his residency in psychiatry, was an MKUltra designated institution and was the site of Human Ecology Fund. That's a CIA money laundering facility if you didn't know. Louis Jolyon West later became a subcontractor for the MKUltra Subproject 43. As part of a grant funding by the CIA, he was also the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Oklahoma. Okay? He submitted papers there titled Psychophysiological Studies of Hypnosis and Suggestibility. I guess that's telling people how to lie with impunity. It was accompanied by a document titled Studies of Dissociative States. To let you know what kind of criminal mind the CIA has. All right, then there's this business of LSD-related death of an elephant. The elephant being Tusko, the 14-year-old prized elephant of the Lincoln Park Zoo in Oklahoma City. This crime happened during the month of August 1962. This is just 2 months before the CIA staged Cuban Missile Crisis that never happened in real life, but happened on newspapers and television. Anyway, the gory details about the Tusko incident were that Dr. Louis Jolyon West and his cohorts, a fellow by the name of Chester Pierce, who was the chief of psychiatry at the local Veterans Administration Hospital in Oklahoma City, and Warren Thomas, who was the Lincoln Park Zoo's director, those three knuckleheads and perhaps some assistants entered the pen for Tusko, the 7,000-pound elephant, and they dosed at high levels LSD into the elephant. And 5 minutes into the completion of the dosing of the LSD, Tusko trumpeted and collapsed, lost bowel control. The 7,000-pound elephant's limbs trembled. His brain entered a dangerous state of persistent seizures, according to the legend. 1 hour and 40 minutes after the injection of the LSD and perhaps a euthanization drug because they weren't satisfied with the results of the LSD, the 14-year-old elephant Tusko died. Dr. Louis Jolyon West, who was then the professor and head of the Department of Psychiatry, Neurology, and Behavioral Science at the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine, he documented this experiment in a science journal. And he wrote, "It appears that the elephant is highly sensitive to the effects of LSD." Well, I guess that depends on the dose, right? A finding which may prove valuable in elephant control work in Africa. What does elephant control work mean? Does it mean eugenics? Does it mean keeping the elephant in a pen? I mean, this elephant was in a zoo pen. So I don't know how you control the elephant unless you want to murder it. Anyway, he wrote that this could be helpful in elephant control work in Africa. West co-wrote, along with Chester Pierce, his cohort with the CIA, they wrote, quote, "The death of Tusko suggests the nature of danger and the most likely cause of death should a lethal overdose be taken by a human." Well, this ambiguous applied linguistics, let me just give you another example. What if, for example, I was paid, I don't know, $3 million by the Ecology Fund? You know, it's the same fund that Dr. Fauci worked with. It's the one that Louis West worked with. What if they paid me $3 million to take Louis Jolyon West and toss him off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, with my hypothesis being that he might survive the fall from 300 feet above the beautiful bay, San Francisco? And then, of course, it turns out that that Dr. Louis Jolyon West breaks every bone in his body, and you got to pull him out of the freezing waters of San Francisco like a sack of potatoes, right? And it turns out I was wrong. Turns out you can't survive from a jump from the Golden Gate Bridge from 300 feet above water, because it's like hitting the asphalt like Frank Olson did in East Manhattan at the Statler Hilton Hotel, right? Both Jolyon West and Chester Pierce claim to have personally taken LSD before they injected Tusko the elephant. Who knows if that's true? I don't think these guys know very much about doping. They just use elephants and animals and humans as test dummies. This makes me so angry. West referred to a study called Mating Madness that causes male elephants to become enraged for weeks, theorizing it might be related to sticky brown secretions from the temporal gland of their brain. I mean, this guy is hallucinating on LSD himself, right? Well, this is Louis Jolyon West. Let me give you some other examples of this quack physician. So like I told you, he's involved with MK Ultra from since its inception, really from 1948. CIA was kind of created as part of the National Security Act of 1947, I believe. And there's Louis Jolyon West. As soon as he gets out of Cornell, they recruit him. And he is a major in the United States Air Force, and he is conducting hypnosis, electroshock treatments, and LSD experiments upon elephants. So we get past that, and in 1967, Dr. Louis Jolyon West is transferred to San Francisco, specifically to the Haight-Ashbury Project, which is a CIA project that Abigail Folger's mother is in charge of, HAP, Haight-Ashbury Project. See, so for all you people out there that think the Sharon Tate murder was a hoax, most of you people don't know that her father was in Army counterintelligence stationed in Haight-Ashbury at the Presidio Army Base. Most of you don't know that Abigail Folger, who was bayoneted 28 times to death, her mother was in charge of the money for the Haight-Ashbury Project. And here comes Louis Jolyon West, who has to report to Abigail Folger's mother, Inez Mejia, who has State Department clearances because her parents are ambassadors to El Salvador and have a wealthy land trust, which collects money from the military who rents their property. So they're part of the military intelligence community, if you didn't know. And here comes Louis Jolyon West. Now, he didn't come out to San Francisco alone. He came out with some cohorts that were selected, I think, for him. He took a leave of absence from the University of Oklahoma from 1966 through 1967. He led a group of researchers, to be unnamed, to the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury Project, where they rented an apartment and studied the hippie culture. You know, this is the summer of love. This is the summer of love. The summer of love where George Sullivan was shot in the head on August 2nd, 1967. And there's Louis Jolyon West. He's right there during the summer of love, where people can get shot in the head in the Port Authority of San Francisco. Anyway, during the latter half of 1967, under the contract with the Foundation's Fund for the Research in Psychiatry from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Anthony Marcella, had alleged that the foundation fund was employed as a CIA funding conduit during the Vietnam War. Really? What a shock. You do realize the whole Haight-Ashbury Summer of Love was financed by the CIA, okay? Everyone's getting paid. Bill Graham, Ken Kesey, Enos Mejia, Abigail Folger's mother, Hunter S. Thompson, Louis Jolyon West, David Smith, Roger Smith, Charlie Manson's room and board taken care of through the Haight-Ashbury Project, Charlie Miles Maddox, Ruth Ann Morehouse, Susan Atkins. They are taken care of through the budget for the Haight-Ashbury Project, which includes Paul Stein, the yellow cab driver who was shot in the head with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He also was a part of the Haight-Ashbury Project, sacrificed in the name of MK terrorism in Presidio Heights. All right, so that was on October 11th, 1969. But anyway, you should know that Louis Jolyon West was the last medical doctor to visit Jack Ruby, whose real name is Jacob Rubenstein. He made sure that Jack Ruby, who was the assassin of Lee Oswald, was held in an isolation cell, and Dr. Louis Jolyon West was then appointed as Jack Ruby's psychiatrist. He pronounced Jacob Rubenstein psychotic and delusional and suggested that further interrogation under the influence of sodium pentothal and hypnosis were necessary. Well, anyway, you know Jack Ruby died, right? He never got his appeal to his murder conviction, which was as a result of Melvin Belli, a Pacific Heights, San Francisco resident, neighbor of Enos Mejia. Melvin Belli pled Jack Ruby guilty with justification. And Jack Ruby wanted to get a different lawyer and appeal that, but instead he had sodium pentothal and hypnosis with Dr. Louis Jolyon West, and he died. Then we had Patricia Hearst. You might have heard of her. She's the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, who is associated with at least one mysterious homicide in Benedict Canyon. During Patricia Hearst's 1976 trial for bank robbery, Louis Jolyon West was appointed by the court in the capacity as Patricia being brainwashed, and he was the expert to testify on her brainwashing. Believing that Patricia Hearst displayed all the classic signs of coercion, brainwashing, and the Stockholm Syndrome effect, Louis West wrote a newspaper article after the trial asking Jimmy Carter to please release Patricia Hearst from prison. And some weeks after her arrest, Patricia Hearst did repudiate her Symbionese Liberation Army alliance. You should know that Jimmy Carter did commute Patricia Hearst's sentence to time served, and then years later, you might have heard of Billy Clinton commuted the entire sentence. He pardoned Patricia Hearst so that information is now expunged from her record. That felony conviction for bank robbery has been expunged. Then Louis Jolyon West was involved with the Church of Scientology, where he took the position that the Scientologists attempted to discredit him and get him fired from his position as the department head chairman for UCLA Psychiatric Department. Oh, God. Can you believe that this knucklehead worked for UCLA for 20 years as a full professor, and he was the chairman? This is just beyond approach. So if you went to University of California, Los Angeles, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I know a lot of people who went there, okay? UCLA Neuropsychiatrics Institute. Louis Jolyon West received tenure, residency, fellowship, full professor status. He served as the chairman of psychiatry for UCLA from 1969 through 1989, which qualified him for a pension and tenure. And he's CIA. So he's working for the CIA, and his position is chairman for the chairman of psychology for UCLA, which is, next to the Playboy Mansion in Holmby Hills. And it's also next to the Terry Semel Neurological Center. That's a friend of Oliver Silverstein. Terry Semel, the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior. Unbelievable. You know that Terry Semel was a executive at Warner Brothers, and he produced JFK. He didn't produce it, he disseminated it, distributed Oliver Silverstein Stone's film JFK, his most famous film in my opinion, which of course takes everybody's eyes away from the book depository and moves them to the picket fence where the kill shot did not come from. So congratulations, Oliver Stone. You did a great magic trick. You just moved the hoax from the school book depository to another place where the kill shot didn't come from. I do believe shots came from the picket fence, but as diversion. The kill shot came from the port facility railroad tracks, triple underpass. That's where the kill shot came from. That explains how his brain, the size of a softball, would go directly behind him onto the trunk of the car and then not roll off the trunk because the car was parked. The car was parked. The limousine was parked. If the limousine was moving, the brain would have rolled off the bumper onto Elm Street, and Jackie Kennedy in a pink pencil skirt would have lost her balance and fallen into the gutter, and none of those things happened. There was the brain. Jackie Kennedy could get up on her hands and knees, grab the brain, and return back into the limousine next to her dead husband without falling onto the concrete or asphalt, because the car was parked as if they were having a picnic. Because William Greer, the limo driver, hit the brakes where Umbrella Man and Radio Man were standing at the base of the steps, which at the top of which, on the pedestal below the Pagonia, was Abraham Zapruder, a Ukrainian Jew. And taking his film with a state-of-the-art camera, Bell and Howell, a Bell and Howell camera, which is a CIA corporation, part of the College of Corporations. You do know that CIA uses sophisticated camera equipment, don't you? And Abraham Zapruder had the state-of-the-art equipment for that Friday, November 22nd, 1963. He's a Ukrainian Jew. And guess what? Louis Jolyon West, he's a Ukrainian Jew also. Anyway, so Terry Semel worked with Oliver Stone, I believe, in 1993 to get JFK distributed by Warner Brothers, which meant it was approved by CIA. And then he went on to Yahoo. He quit Warner Brothers and went to become the CEO of Yahoo, where he made a gajillion dollars on the Yahoo stock, and he donated a large part of that to UCLA and got his name, he and his wife's name, onto the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior. And when I say he donated it, I mean the CIA redirected the money that was ill-gotten from Yahoo, and they just moved it on over to University of California, Los Angeles, also known as the Ronald Reagan Hospital. Don't you just love it how they just mock us? Anyway, so I guess what I wanted to say here, I don't want to make this too long, but Louis Jolyon West's birth in Brooklyn is exactly the same as Anthony Fauci's. And then they both received their residency status from Cornell, Medical Center. And then they both went on to careers in military intelligence, clandestine services, both of them. So, do I take medical advice from a guy who kills a 7,000-pound elephant, a helpless elephant in a zoo in Oklahoma City? No, I don't. Do I take medical advice from a doctor with really little to no clinical experience by the name of Fauci? No. No, I don't. Why would I? He's in the bioweapons business. He's in the military-industrial complex. You do realize that Fort Detrick, which is like 35 miles from his office, is United States Army bioweapons facility. So, in other words, the pharmaceutical industry is part of the military complex, just like Medicare is, just like our education indoctrination system is through federal funding. All the colleges of corporations are in compliance with the military industrial complex because they all do business with it. They're all financially engineered to obey. We obey, we respect the chain of command, we keep our lips zipped, and we follow our mission goals. That's it. It's very simple. And if you deviate from that, either you get whacked or your children get whacked. So we have Abigail Folger as an example. We have Sharon Tate as an example. We have Anthony Bourdain as an example. We have John Benet Ramsey, age 6, garroted in the wine cellar of her father's home in Boulder, Colorado on Christmas Day evening. And he works for Lockheed as an executive vice president. Lockheed is a CIA corporation in charge of technical surveillance. Are you surprised that a 6-year-old beauty pageant queen like Sharon Tate was at age 6? Sharon Tate was a beauty pageant winner at age 6 months. At age 6 months, Sharon Tate won her first beauty pageant, Tiny Tots, in Dallas, Texas. 20 years before Jack Kennedy had his head blown off, Sharon Tate won a Tiny Tots beauty pageant in Dallas 20 years before John Kennedy was murdered in the port facility on Elm Street in Dallas, Dealey Plaza. Do you see? And then John Benet Ramsey comes along in 1996 and she gets garroted. This is the same year that William Colby, the former director of CIA, got murdered. He was also in charge of Operation Phoenix Terrorism in Vietnam. And he was murdered in his kitchen, probably by some kind of a toxic injection, and we'll never know because, of course, his body was kept in a refrigerator for 9 days, in pristine condition, with his undigested meal of clam and steamed corn in his belly. That's how we know he was murdered, in his kitchen or within a few minutes of being removed from his kitchen onto the Zodiac boat there in Rock Point, Maryland. We know he was killed that evening between 8:45 and 10 p.m., somewhere in that zone. William Colby, director of Phoenix, participant in Gladio in Italy, and director of CIA, cleaning up the mess of Watergate caused by Richard Helms's inability to lie with a straight face. And he got murdered at age 76. And this is just like 45 days after Oliver Silverstein Stone went over to visit Timothy Leary at the Sharon Tate Abigail murder scene at 10106 Sunbrook Drive. Go Google it, check it out. It's 30 seconds down the ice plant from where Abigail's body bled out. And this is on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 1996, the same year that John Benet Ramsey was murdered, the same year that William Colby was murdered. It's a lot of murders in my videos, if you haven't noticed. All right, that's it for today. Hit the like and subscribe. We'll talk soon. Please share my videos because I am shadow banned.